I took this one supplement and got much better focus effects than caffeine without any jitters. Welcome to the Joe Cohen Show. Join me as I share my experience with biohacking and invite top health experts to explore the latest technology, supplements, research, and resources for optimizing your body and brain. Saffron is an ancient spice and food and has been used for millennia with food and also as medicine. And I used it before. I did a bunch of experiments before on improving my mood. Now, if I just looked at one thing with regard to mood, it was good, but it wasn't as effective as certain other things I was comparing it to at the time. And so I basically just gave up on it. However, recently it came up on my self decode recommendations. Because the recommendations algorithm in self decode is so smart, I basically said, okay, I'm going to look at the top 50 recommendations and basically do all of them unless there is some big reason why I am deciding not to. And so I looked at all the top recommendations, especially for supplements. So I was looking also at the top 50 supplement recommendations, and I was looking at every one that I wasn't doing. I'm already taking 130 supplements a day. So I was taking most of the things, but so far I'm at number 35. And with number 35, there was 7 that I wasn't doing, 7 or 8. And so saffron came up as one of the highest. And I said, okay, this is interesting. I've tried it out many times before. I've done many mega dosing experiments with saffron. And for whatever reason, I decided not to continue taking it. But I said, okay, look, it's coming up high on my recommendations. Let me see what happens if I take it now. And let me see why it's being recommended. So I looked at why it's being recommended, and it actually had a bunch of really good reasons that I wasn't really thinking of. So this is the difference between a single dimensional approach to health or a multi-dimensional approach. The way that even alternative or any kind of healthcare is done today, homeopathic, it's based on a specific symptom or a specific variant or a specific lab test. The problem with that view of medicine or health is that the body's very multidimensional and natural stuff is very multidimensional. What that means is that these natural recommendations, whether it's diet, lifestyle, or supplements, they impact the body in many ways, but in a small way. Whereas drugs, they impact the body in one way, but in a very significant way. They target a very specific biochemical pathway. So supplements or natural stuff like exercise, it's targeting a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not as strong in each way as a drug usually. So when we look at supplements, we look at one thing, okay, is it going to help me with this specific issue? The thing is that as I build up a lot of data and there's too much data essentially, right? I've got these goals, these symptoms, conditions, these lab markers that I want to optimize. I've have these lifestyle risks based on questionnaires. I have these genetic variants. The way that a lot of these other softwares are doing it is they're taking a very specific thing. So you have this genetic marker, therefore you need to do this. You have this polygenic risk score, therefore you need to do that. You have this symptom, do this. You have this lab marker, you need to do this. The multidimensional approach is saying that for any given thing, you're not going to do something. You're not going to just do something because you have a certain symptom or a condition, and it helps with the condition. If we think about mood, for example, there's 300 things in self-decode that have a clinical trial that are related to mood, right? And I'm sure we don't even have all of them. So let's say there's 350 natural recommendations to improve mood that have a clinical trial. And that could be anything, any supplement or any natural lifestyle approach. The problem with that is you're not going to do 350 things, right? So you have to still choose what are you going to do from that. Now, you could say, for example, okay, I'm going to do the things that are going to have the highest impact based on the research. And that's a valid approach, right? So that's why we also sort things based on impact within each self decode report. And that's valid. So, for example, if something has a very high impact for a certain condition, and this is very high up on your list, you're going to try that. Very valid approach. The problem is that nobody only has one issue or one goal that they're trying to optimize. Usually, even if they do have, there's other things about their body that isn't optimal. There's lab tests that aren't optimal. There's specific genetic variants. There's diseases in the future that they want to prevent. So one of the great things about genetics is it could tell you in the future, what are you most likely to get first? What are you most likely to die from first? What are you most likely to get debilitated from first? And once you have those conditions, it's very hard to treat them. You have to prevent them. So there's a lot of information that we need to synthesize and put together and try to make an action plan or get recommendations for them. Those are your issues that you have now, your symptoms, conditions, or goals. Goal is not necessarily an issue, but maybe it's something like you want to recover faster, you want your brain to work better, you want to be faster, whatever it is, you want to sleep better. There's always these are things that you could always optimize. Mood is something you could always optimize. So these are goals. Then you want things that you want to prevent in the future. These are genetic risks that are going to hit you later on. And then there's things like you might have a family history of something, or it's very clear that you have a certain lifestyle risk. Maybe you weren't breastfed or whatever it is. There's certain lifestyle risks that aren't captured by genetics or aren't captured by any issue you have right now. Those are some things you want to address as well. And then maybe sometimes specific genetic variants like MTHFR and certain other things that have clinical trials related to it, and also labs that are out of the optimal range, which are going to affect longevity long term. So those are all the things that you want to look at. And the multidimensional approach uses software and AI to look at all of these things rather than just individual things at a time, and comes up with a recommendation based on all of these factors together. So this is a very revolutionary concept in precision health. And to my knowledge, only Self Decode is doing this right now. If anybody knows any other company, I'd like you to suggest it. But the level of breadth and all the types of data we're looking at is truly amazing. So getting back to saffron, looking at one thing made me decide not to take it. But once I looked at it in a multidimensional approach, I started to get a different understanding. Even before I was taking it, I said, okay, this is interesting. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of focus. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of exercise recovery and in terms of sleep. I was just thinking about it in terms of mood, which it did help my mood, but just wasn't significant enough to take for that reason alone. And so I looked at, okay, this helps with gut inflammation. And I'm always trying to reduce gut inflammation just because I have a natural propensity there, even though I don't have any issues now. It improves immunity, it improves sleep onset, strength, exercise recovery, focus. And so I decided, and then it also improves a bunch of genetic risks and lab markers that I wanted to improve or that were suboptimal in the past, and then certain lifestyle risks. And so I said, okay, this is very interesting. I started taking it again, and I started to look at more of the things that this can improve. And what was interesting is that I noticed a very strong effect on focus. So that was one thing that improved that just was not something that you would expect from saffron. It's too early to tell if it helped with my immunity or exercise recovery or strength. These are things that could take a long time to tell, but it did help with two things that were very clear to me were three things were mood, focus, and sleep onset. And if I were to just focus on mood, I understand why I wouldn't want to continue taking it. But when you combine all of those things with the lab markers, it made much more sense to take it. And so once I did some megadosing experiments, I tried different brands. Most of the brands that I tried were pretty good. The brands aren't really the issue, it's more the extraction method. So I've tried many different types of extraction methods. I tried the whole herb. I tried the one that I find, there's a couple of them that I found. The ones that are 2% saffronols are pretty good, or the ones that are also saffron affron was pretty good. That's a brand name, a specific extraction. So I'm still going to check my labs and see how this impacts my labs. But overall, I think it's been one of the supplements that has been a game changer for me, and definitely would not have found it without Self Decode. It came up as number 13 on Self Decode for overall recommendations, not just supplements or whatever, just for everything. And keep in mind that things like exercise and a lot of other things are going to come up pretty high up. So for a supplement to come up 13, that means that is very significant. And that's the only reason I started taking it. And what I learned from this experiment, just as a tangent, is that doing all the 35 supplement recommendations that I've done so far, they've all been actually very helpful. So the software has been really useful. But I would say saffron was the first thing that I tried doing that approach, just looking at the software, and it's been really good. So I'm going to go through some of the specific benefits of saffron so that we could go into what this was doing for me. So the specific labs that this was helping with is fasting glucose. So my fasting glucose tends to be near 100. Although my HbA1c is optimal, the fasting glucose is something that I still want to improve. It's not clear why it went up. I think it was because of a bunch of reasons, but essentially it's something I want to improve. Also, my creatine kinase tends to be higher, which is a sign of maybe not recovering as quickly as I want to. And so this helped with both of those things. There's also lipids, for example, anything that lowers LDL cholesterol is something that I like taking. My my LDL now is pretty good, but I actually stopped with the PCSK9 inhibitor, so I'm assuming it's going to go back up. I'll probably retake it in the future. I'm just doing an A/B test. I want to see, okay, what is my LDL now without any drug? And then lactate dehydrogenase, that's another marker for recovery. It used to be a little bit elevated. Now it's been in the optimal range, but keeping that in the optimal range is a goal. And then I would say it helps with IgG and IgM. So those are the labs that are relevant for me that either are not optimal or were not optimal in the past. Some of the lifestyle risks that I have are ADHD and hay fever. So there's some benefits for those. I'm not sure. I have to look exactly why I got a high lifestyle risk for ADHD. Hay fever is because my mom has it. So that makes sense. And then for certain genetic risks that it was helpful. So fibromyalgia, interesting. I have a high genetic risk for that, and it helps for that. For low mood, we discussed, it helps for that. Again, I'm not worried about getting MS, but if you have a high genetic risk for a bunch of autoimmune conditions, it could indicate that your immune system is more likely to go haywire, even if you don't get any condition. And then it helps with the DRD2 gene, which is something I like to improve because that helps with creativity, motivation, extroversion. And it also helps with strength, which I actually have a genetic risk for. Interesting enough. I would say that for my muscle mass, I'm definitely not as strong as I should be. So I could see why this is the case, meaning like I'm overall strong. If you exercise a lot, if you have muscle mass, you will be stronger than if I had less muscle mass. But I would say that my strength compared to someone with my muscle mass is definitely not what it should be. So I could see that being the case. And then, as I mentioned, it can improve exercise recovery, focus, immunity, mood, relaxation, sleep onset, anxiety. And I found that, and gut inflammation. I found that for sleep, gut inflammation, I think, meaning I feel a sensation in my gut. So it's probably doing something there. I don't have any symptoms right now, so it's hard to know for sure, but I can see why it would help with gut inflammation. And then for mood as well, I think but focus would, I would say it was the number one thing for me. I don't know if that's going to be the case for everybody, but for me, it was definitely the number one thing. One of the reasons why I am interested in anxiety and mood and insomnia, I was doing a bunch of experiments with AKG that were increasing glutamate, and that was causing anxiety, insomnia, mood issues. And I was doing that to see what would happen if my glutamate goes up higher, or just being curious, but also to see what helps counteract those. And saffron did help counteract those effects from glutamate. It also has some serotonin effects. It helps with serotonin, dopamine, and also reducing glutamate. I find saffron puts me in a meditative like state. So it makes it much easier for me to meditate, for example. If I don't take saffron, I have a monkey mind. For example, if I sit down to meditate, I'm not going to be able to meditate. It's just going to go from random thoughts. Saffron helps ground me, and that's the type of focus that I'm talking about. Caffeine, for example, is much more stimulating and it's not as grounding. So if I take caffeine, it's actually harder to meditate. In a certain way, it improves reaction time. Caffeine is something that you want to increase focus for when you're, let's say, going to the gym right after, or if you're doing exercise. So if you're going to be moving, caffeine is going to be good. Whereas if you're going to be doing work or something where you need to be more still, I find saffron is a much better focusing agent. So caffeine is better in the morning, let's say. You want to get things going. Saffron is better in the evening. One of the things about sleep that saffron is good for is it helps put me to sleep. One of the things that I do not correctly in health, and yes, I'm not perfect in every way, is I'll exercise at night because acro yoga that I do is at night and I really like it. So it's one of those trade offs. One of the worst things you could do for your sleep is exercise at night. And this exercise, I finish exercising at about 10:30 p.m. So if you want to go to sleep at 1, that's not a good idea, right? And I know this. It's not something that is new to me, but I have to make a decision and say, look, I like acro yoga and this is important for me in other ways. So I'm going to take some hit on my sleep and try to minimize the effect. So one of the things I noticed with saffron actually is it helped calm my nervous system after the exercise, and that facilitated me to go to sleep earlier and get better quality sleep despite the exercise late in the day. I take saffron after dinner, so it's in my nightstack, and all the pills in my nightstack I take after dinner. The Saffron Afron brand is 28 milligrams of saffron. I'll also take maybe around 30 milligrams of 2% saffranols or 15 milligrams, depends what I'm taking. But essentially, anywhere between 15 and 50 milligrams of saffron is a good dosage. And this is going to depend on the extraction method. I like the Paradise Herbals 2% saffronol, and that I believe is 15 milligrams of saffron. And then the saffron Afron is 28 milligrams. Overall, saffron is one of the top supplements that I take. I mean, there's a lot of top supplements that I take. Not going to lie. Probably I would put it in the top 20. It's hard to compare one and another, but it really does do something very good that I like, which is the focus potential. So I'm still trying more versions out. Not every version works the same. I've tried out about 6 different types of saffron. The 2 that I mentioned, I found are the best that I've found so far. 67% of listeners aren't subscribed to the show, so please don't forget to show your support by hitting the subscribe button now. You'll not only be supporting the show, but also investing in yourself and your health journey, all while helping to keep us ad-free.